Hello and welcome to the Metabolic Balance Stories podcast. This is where we share real stories and insights to help you on your journey with optimal health and personalized nutrition. I'm Cherry Wills, I'm your host, and today I'm delighted that we are doing a focus podcast on exercise nutrition, sports nutrition, using metabolic balance with athletes and sports enthusiasts, people who love to do their exercise. Basically, we're talking about that personalized sports nutrition. I'm joined today by two expert metabolic balance practitioners. Katie King is a clinical nutritionist with a particular niche and interest and expertise in sports nutrition. And Karen Pyke is a clinical nutritionist as well, and also a fully qualified personal trainer to add to that as well. So a big hello to you both, Karen and Katie.
Hi, Cherry. Thanks
Hi.
for having us.
So, Karen, let's start with you because, give us your take on using metabolic balance with athletes, with sports enthusiasts, with people who love to exercise.
Yeah, look, I love metabolic balance for all demographics, but in particular when it comes to sports nutrition, there's a lot of, as with any part of nutrition, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of misinformation out there. And what I kind of found from a sports perspective, a lot of my clients are sports focused, and they would come in and not really have an idea of what they were doing with nutrition. They were spending a lot of time training to get their goals, but they weren't then fueling themselves correctly to actually achieve the results that they needed. And one of the biggest things that I found is that a lot of them were actually overtraining to try to create those results. What I loved about metabolic balance is that we could then actually pull it back. We actually were able to pull back the training. We were actually able to personalize their nutrition and achieve better results with more focused training and more focused nutrition. And the results are just incredible when you actually combine the personalization as to what that individual needs, because no two people are the same, and even the way they train and the sports they do aren't the same. So it's kind of like we've got this idea of what we want to achieve, but how do we achieve it for that person and understand them as an individual?
Yeah, because we should probably just sort of clarify for people who aren't fully aware of how the program kind of evolves. But in the first couple of weeks, we do, because we're trying to reset the metabolism for everybody, regardless actually of whether they're particularly strong in sports and athletics, etc. But everybody does do minimal or sort of reduced level of exercise for the first couple of weeks, because we actually do want to address that metabolism and get things back on track. How do you find that is received by a lot of people? I mean, Katie, if we bring you in here.
I think that most of the time it's received fine. I think when people come looking for metabolic balance, they're looking for something different. So yes, that's an unusual request to have them minimize their training early on, but at the same time, it's very different. And so, most people who do metabolic balance, they have tried everything else and they haven't been successful. So sometimes it's quite welcome, because it's, when you explain, well, we're trying to reduce the inflammation, we need the body to really rest and heal and fix that metabolism. That's why we're doing it. It's quite well received. And I guess it just comes back to making sure that you're doing the plan with an athlete at the right time. So you'd never start a plan with an athlete, 3 weeks from an event. You would start a plan with an athlete ideally in their off season, or at least 12 to 16 weeks away from any major events. So you could build training in later on, further down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you, I mean, Katie, what would you say is to the key things that you've noted working with athletes and getting and adjusting the plan to be optimized for them?
As in, what are the main results?
Yeah, what would you share with people listening about this?
I think a lot of athletes come looking for metabolic balance because they may not feel like they're at their ideal or optimal weight for their sport. So they may, even if it's just a couple of kilograms, they're struggling with that couple of kilograms. But I think that's generally quite quickly achieved with MB, because obviously those initial stages are focused on that metabolism repair. I think the extraordinary result that most people get that they don't expect perhaps is just a new level of performance and recovery. So just their body feels better, they feel less sore, they're recovering faster, they feel lighter. In general, they're just with that reduced inflammation. That's probably one of the nicest and most unexpected benefits for somebody who is athletic and focusing on a particular sport.
Yeah, I think that's that's certainly what we hear a lot of. It's that suddenly that's actually they get improved personal bests and the natural ability to do what they their particular sport is. Karen, you've had some pretty good results with that, I know.
Yeah, I have. It was actually interesting. Yesterday, I actually had a phone call from a particular client. So I started working with him, look, I want to say about 12 months ago. He called me. He'd just finished an event and had hit that, I guess, probably that sort of real sort of chronic fatigue type, I guess, recovery with himself. Like he was, the clarity wasn't there. He just wasn't, the injuries were there as well. So he'd sort of spent this whole year training, did an event, and then was injured as well. And he'd been using shakes and gels and supplements to help him get to where he wanted to. And I think he just realized that he wanted a different focus. So we pulled everything back. We actually did that rest as well, allowing that off season to have that ability to rest, reducing that inflammation down, and then starting to build things back up again. And the thing with metabolic balance is we have this foundation of food. So, and a lot of the foods, like from a basic plan that we get, are unlikely in certain sports to actually provide the fuel that they need. So then it needs adjusting and it needs tailoring, especially around their training program as well. So we slowly did this through the 12 months. When he called me yesterday, he had just made the Australian team for surf boat racing, which was one of his goals that I don't know that he ever really thought was going to be achievable. He didn't come to me with a weight loss goal. It was a performance goal, but also lost weight, changed his body composition as well, which was part of the key as to what he wanted. Has now made this. And the comment was doing it with real food. That was his big thing.
It's quite a big thing, isn't it, though, for athletes to, in some ways, slow down to speed up again, as in taking your foot off the real training focus to say, actually, kind of the way my body's working right now isn't really in my best interest. So you slow down, have that off season, have that recovery, get yourself into a really good place, and then you really speed up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like with that process, the body needs a certain level of inflammation to actually help it repair. But there's this fine line between inflammation and then chronic inflammation. What I tend to see with people until they go through this process is that their inflammation just keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. And although they may have a plan that they're following with nutrition, it's not been tailored or targeted to them. And the foods that they're eating could also be increasing that inflammation. And you just get this breaking point.
It's a new way of thinking for athletes, I think, because the signs of, chronic inflammation like recurrent injuries and maybe getting worse times as opposed to better, all of those things are almost like in a typical scenario, an athlete might be thinking, oh, I need to train harder, like, my muscles aren't strong enough, or, this is compensating for that, therefore I need to do more work on this muscle, or I'm getting slower, so I'm not doing enough. Whereas MB is a complete opposite to that. It's like, actually, well, you're possibly overdoing it, and let's go back to the kitchen and get that right first, and then rebuild from there, like get the foundation right and then rebuild everything, the training, nutrition, everything, once we've got that baseline meal plan in place.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the argument has often been, exercise. There is absolutely plethora of research talking about the benefits of exercise on longevity and the body and insulin sensitivity. I mean, there's plethora of what exercise does. But actually, if you have not got the diet right, then that real result from doing the hard work in the gym or on the track or wherever it might be, it's just not really felt, or it's not going to be seen. And I think sometimes people kind of think that the food is like, they push that right down to the bottom of their priority, or just, that will do. They'll do general sports nutrition, meet the protein for body weight and all that kind of stuff. But all protein is seen the same and everything is the same. And then, they don't get the results.
Yes, because so many programs now just focus on what you just said, Cherry. It's very numbers driven. It's okay, well, you should be getting 2 grams 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight and X number of grams of carbohydrate. And then when you're fueling, you need this many number of carbohydrates. And it, that's like, what foods fall into a carbohydrate category? So many, and not all of them are, most of them aren't great for the body. So it does make sense that coming at it from a personalized nutrition approach and actually eating the types of food that are right for the body is going to have a lot of benefit, as opposed to just going, forget about the types of food and just hit these numbers and you'll be fine.
It kind of is that whole thing of saying all protein is exactly the same. It's just protein. And I mean, I was reading an article recently where a lot of athletes were just going with smoked chicken. There was some kind of smoked chicken thing, and people are just eating absolutely, kilos of chicken or something endlessly. And I'm like, well, what if chicken isn't the right protein for you?
Exactly. And I think as well, like with all of those things, like we can all just get a sports nutrition. Like, I mean, I know through my uni days, I did sports nutrition as part of my uni subjects, and they're still very generic. They're like Katie said, this person, you need X amount of grams of protein based on the type of exercise you are doing, the duration that you're doing it. And then you need to have this much hydration and you need to have this. And never actually really talks about fats and things and bringing fats in and all of that sort of thing. Whereas I just find with metabolic balance, it is this holistic look at the individuals and going, what do you need? Like if I gave somebody that was training 2 grams of protein and their body wasn't ready for it, they're probably going to feel a lot worse. Whereas if I gave them too little protein, then that becomes an issue as well. So we have this foundation that we can tailor, we can adjust, we can make it work for the individual. I think the client I spoke about yesterday, plus I've got some other clients, and it's actually really interesting that all of them say it's been 80% nutrition that has got the results. I mean, yes, they've got to put the hard work in to actually achieve those results. But for a long time, and as a personal trainer, even my background, I always used to say I used to think you could outrun a bad diet. And by a bad diet, I don't mean eating McDonald's and things like that. Like, just eating, you can't outrun a diet that doesn't work for you. Like, you've got to have something that works for you individually.
Because it's not just the sort of top end athletes either. It is actually just anybody who just likes to exercise or loves to be active, or is seeing that they are not getting the result, their health and their metabolic health and their body weight is not changing in the direction that they want it to be changing, but they are actually working ridiculously hard on their exercise. This is also the people we're really talking to here. We want to get their attention to say, let's look at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis in the kitchen and the kitchen table, and what you're putting into, as your fuel. Let's really look at that as the first thing we've got to get right before you start endlessly doing so much work outside of the house in terms of exercise.
The other thing that's interesting with sports nutrition is it doesn't, you can't say that a 20-year-old female athlete versus a 45-year-old female athlete is going to be able to cope with the same macronutrients. So, like a 45-year-old runner isn't going to be able to tolerate the number of grams of carbohydrates that a 20-year-old runner is going to be able to tolerate. And then that's where we see, this feedback of athletes who, feel bloated all the time and feel unwell and feel tired and lethargic when they should be feeling energized and strong and healthy, because there's that lack of personalization when we just look at the numbers and perhaps the gender and the output as opposed to what the individual actually needs.
I also think as well, like a lot of, not just female, I was going to say female, but it's not just female, it's male as well. Like a lot of the athletes that I have been working with have been actually eating too little. They've actually kind of been training harder. They've been trying to make a weight goal and have been working on this theory of still this calories in, calories out. If I exercise more and I reduce what I eat, then I'll achieve my results. And they just haven't using that. Like it can't fuel them. So a lot of time, like even through the process of metabolic balance, they're actually going, I'm actually receiving the results. I'm eating more. I'm feeling nourished. I'm feeling more energized post exercise. So it's kind of actually giving them more really good nutrition to actually hit their goals.
Yeah, we spoke to on the. I had a lovely podcast a couple of weeks ago with Bryce, who is a client of yours, Katie, and he had. That was a great story that he shared about how he, all his life, he's been an incredibly active man, but he's also been overweight. Even though he loved his trail running and loved to do exercise, he's never been able to actually get to a weight that was comfortable for him. But so it didn't stop him, but it was not it was not a healthy weight. And he worked with you, Katie, and he had the results that he wanted.
Yeah, I think Bryce is an example of obviously he had a great plan that worked for his body and that sort of thing, but a lot of athletes don't realize the importance of their food to start with. So they are out there exercising all the time and wondering, well, why am I still feeling, not as optimal as I should for all the exercise that I'm doing? And once we even just bringing awareness to Bryce and what he was putting on his plate and what he was putting on his plate between his meals, that was a big thing. So, obviously MB is real food based, and there's definitely that, I definitely relate to Karen. There's a lot of people out there who are under eating in terms, who are athletic, but then there's also, sometimes it's also about reminding athletes that even when we are exercising, we still have to put the good stuff in, to get, the good output as well. So, metabolic balance definitely teaches those, really good, solid, long-term habits.
I think it's also important to sort of touch on the fact as well that a lot of these events that these people are doing, like especially, like I've got a couple of clients that are doing ultra marathons and things like that. So they're out there and they are actually doing an event for a hugely extended period of time. And in that time, we do sometimes use gels. We'll use different foods, different electrolyte solutions and things like that. I personally go back to real food when I can to make sure that we can actually optimize that. But the good thing about that as well is like a lot of these gels and things over the course of an event, that inflammation can keep going up again, like the body can't process it as well. But it's also then having a plan to come to once the event's over to actually help the body to reset and to repair and recover again as well. Because certainly there's events around the world, around the country, that a lot of the nutrition on at the event, so on course, is actually provided because they don't have the ability to carry everything themselves with them. So they've got something when they come back to actually go, okay, I've got a plan. I know how to recover. I know how to prepare myself for that next event.
Yeah. And I think it just the other thing that I'm hearing as well from what you were saying is that it's seeing the real place for all of the tools and innovations and the research in the gels and the supplements and the electrolytes, actually using them all for the right reasons in the right ways to get the best results, but not relying on them when we shouldn't be. As in, supplements get the chance to really supplement the best diet and bring out the best results, but we know what the foundation needs to be.
Yeah, the supplements don't replace the diet, which can sometimes be tempting, especially when people are time poor and they're racing from training sessions to work and that kind of thing. But absolutely, MB is about getting that foundation of real food and then using the other things selectively.
Is there any particular pieces of advice that you would give to somebody that, I don't know, maybe just who's just listening to this, not necessarily about immediately doing MB, but just about recognizing some of the signs that they need to be looking more at what they're eating than maybe they think they do?
Niggles. I just think niggles, constant niggles is a big one that, just pushing through, little injury after little injury after little injury. I feel like that's kind of where it all starts to unravel potentially.
It's just showing that the body's not repairing, basically, isn't it? It's there's that the resources really aren't there.
And I also think as well, like, I think it goes back to something Katie said before as well, like putting the training in and just not getting the performance that you probably in the back of your mind know that you can achieve. You're just kind of pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and you're just not feeling that great. So really listening to you. But like, I love the niggles thing, like all of those niggles, and waking up in the morning and just kind of going, oh, okay, I've got to stretch. I've got to move all of this tightness out and this sort of thing. Like there's little niggles that are there.
Another one that I like is heart rate too. So those people who are responding or tracking their heart rate, and they're seeing that they're not going any faster necessarily, but their heart rate is not going down. Like they're having to, like they're going at the same speed or even slower, but they're seeing that their heart rate is elevated still. That comes back to that sort of Phil Maffetone heart rate training method, which I think has got a whole lot of research around it. But that's a big one that, hey, like you're not getting any faster. You're staying the same speed, but your body's working a lot harder to maintain this same pace and output. So what's going on here?
I also work with my clients as well on those kind of health tech devices as well. So like if they're using a Garmin or something else that's showing their recovery. A lot of the time what I find is that these particular clients, they're going out, they're training, coming up overnight. In the morning, they've been wearing this tech that's helping them, but they haven't recovered, and then they're going out and training again as well. So if you're using that tech, listen to what the tech's also saying. I mean, it's not always going to be accurate, but if your body's told you that you've not recovered, it might not be the training. There's a good chance that the food's going to help you do that as well.
And I think would you say that it's also this recognition that you need to do something differently? Because I think there's a strong, you tell me here, but there's a strong, incredible mentality of determination and pushing through and kind of almost trying to defy reality or something, saying, no, this is fine. It'll all come together in next week or in the next training session, and actually kind of going, hey, maybe I do need to do something different here, and sort of just saying, yeah, what I'm doing isn't actually giving me the results that I need.
Yeah, it's that whole idea of just being smarter about it, not necessarily going harder.
I think what they say, train smarter, not harder.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, that's you've summed it up brilliantly there. Of course, it is being, being really looking at the bigger picture, and I often say sometimes for as human beings, we are all often, we can kid ourselves that everything is fine, or that we don't need to do that bit, or that can get away with this. I think whatever, your focus or what your passion is in life, sometimes we can go down this slight, kidding ourselves route, but actually you come to the conclusion, go, yep, actually, all right, if I'm really sitting in a place of real honesty, what I'm doing isn't really working, and I've got to look at it differently. Change takes change.
Yeah, definitely. So I work with a number of people, as I'm sure Katie does as well. Like, I've been working with a teenager on swimming and their performance in the pool. And I think my eldest client that I'm working with sports at the moment, they're at the marathon sort of stage. I think my eldest is around 76. So I think, like, sports nutrition is for all ages. So I think a lot of the time we sort of think of these people in their peak, and it's like around that sort of 2030s that we're really pushing it. But it's at any age, looking to really sort of optimize. And especially as they get older as well, the risk of injuries increases, the ability to train as hard, or for as long. So the nutritional foundation is so key to that as well, to help with those sort of things.
And not just the risk of injury, like if we're looking at, and yeah, the reality is that most of the people who are doing ultra distance events are 60 plus, and yeah, absolutely into their 70s and even 80s, because they've got that mileage in their legs. But with these older athletes, the importance of looking after what they're putting into their mouths is even more so, because obviously they're going to be at higher risk of chronic health conditions. So if they're eating rubbish and they're out there smashing themselves, well, you don't want them keeling over and having a heart attack or a stroke or something. Like, that's when exercise really becomes a problem instead of a benefit. If if their diet is contributing to all these underlying health conditions, they can't literally run away from that.
Yeah, I think it's just fueling your body for whatever it is that you want your body to be doing at that moment in time, and whichever decade of life that might be. We just need to fuel and enjoy the food and feel nicely satiated and supported and know what to do. I think that probably may be what we can sort of bring this all back to the beginning as well, when it's really like giving people this really great knowledge and understanding that this is what is right for them.
Yes, and it's not that complicated, really, is it? I mean, it's just like we've said the whole time through. It's just that whole foods, and it's like Karen said at the beginning, there's so much noise out there with sports nutrition. And the reality is that a lot of stuff that's out there for sports nutrition, we don't really need, or we might need it 3 times a year when we do an event, but not every other day. So often it's about stripping back the diet, coming back to the basics, stripping back the training, going back to, just a little bit of movement to start off with, the stretching, the yoga and that sort of thing, and rebuilding from there. So, it's as we rebuild the diet, we rebuild the training as well. And then the results and the output is a different story.
So thank you so much to both of you. I think that's just a really important message to get across, that fueling your body is just key, no matter whether you are wanting to, just be your optimal self with your day-to-day life, or it is actually achieving those PBs, those sports or career goals and key events. Whatever you want to achieve, you've got to fuel your body right and fuel it right for you, not just generically, which doesn't really get the results that we want. So thank you so much for joining me, Karen and Katie. More details about getting in touch with Karen and Katie are in the show notes. And I just want to say a big thank you again. And we will leave it there for this time. And I look forward to connecting with you all next Metabolic Balance Stories.